This is the Mental Health Today show. I'm John Cordray, a licensed professional counselor and the host of this show. Welcome, my friends. Today we're talking about imposter syndrome, turning mental barriers into mental wellness. Have you ever gone to work or you looked at the team that you're working with and your colleagues, and you ever wondered, how did I get here? How did I find this job and do the job that I'm doing? And I feel like such a failure. Why aren't I fired yet? And you look all around and you point out what everybody else is doing right. And you can only think about what you're doing wrong. Think about this. So maybe this applies to you. Maybe you'll understand this story, this scenario. You just wrapped up a major project that moved the needle for the entire team. That's awesome. Your inbox is flooded with congratulations. Your boss pulls you aside and he says, "We couldn't have done this without you." And yet, that quiet voice pipes up the second you're alone. They just don't know how much you faked it. This was complete luck, and next time they'll find out. They'll discover the real you. If that scenario just made you wince because it hits way too close to home, you're not alone, my friends. Welcome to the vicious anxiety loop of imposter syndrome and high achiever stress that keeps so many of us brilliant, driven professionals trapped in the never good enough feelings, even when the evidence points to otherwise. I see this every week in my counseling practice with busy executives, attorneys, and fellow therapists who look like they have it all together. And yet, on the outside, they feel like they're frauds on the inside. The great news is that imposter syndrome isn't a character flaw. Did you get that? Imposter syndrome is not a character flaw. If you struggle with imposter syndrome, you look at all the reasons why you're a failure and everybody else is a success. It's not a character flaw. It's a cognitive distortion trap that high achievers maintain through their own perfectionistic feedback loops. It's a cognitive distortion, not a character flaw. And here's a unique angle we're exploring today. You can turn the exact same analytical wiring that fuels the problem into your most powerful recovery tool. We're not talking fluffy affirmations or just believe in yourself pep talks, although those could help too. We're talking about mental mechanics, practical, evidence-based coping strategies that rewire perfectionistic thinking using the logical, data-driven brain you already bring to work every single day. How about that? By the end of this episode, you'll know how to spot the difference between imposter syndrome and real growth opportunities, and interrupt that anxiety loop before it spirals, prevent burnout by treating your mental energy like the strategic asset that it is, and most importantly, use your overthinking superpowers to build lasting mental wellness instead of letting them build walls. Sound good? Sound possible? All right, grab your coffee, your tea, or hop on that treadmill, go walk the dog, whatever you're doing, because we're going deep for the next 30 minutes. So let's get started. Let's begin with the foundation. Understanding exactly how this vicious anxiety loop gets wired and why it feels so impossible to escape. Think of your brain as an incredibly sophisticated risk management system that got rewarded for decades for spotting every tiny flaw and planning for every possible failure. You achieve something impressive, boom, dopamine hit. But instead of savoring it, your high achiever mind immediately runs a threat scan. What if this was a fluke? What if they discover I'm not actually that talented? That's the perfectionist feedback loop in real time. The same sharp analytical skills that make you excellent at forecasting, strategizing, and delivering results become the very engine manufacturing never good enough feelings. I want to introduce you to a client I'll call Dr. Rachel, a talented pediatric oncologist at a major teaching hospital. She had just successfully led a complex treatment protocol that improved outcomes for a group of patients in a way her department hadn't seen in years. The chief of staff sent a personal note praising her clinical judgment. Her colleagues were lining up to learn from her. And that evening, sitting in her car in the parking garage, Rachel told me she cried, not from joy, but from that crushing thought. They're all going to realize I'm just winging it, and someone could have done this better. Classic cognitive distortions at work. Discounting the positive and overgeneralizing the past insecurities and catastrophizing about an imagery future exposure. Research backs this up. Up to 70% of high achievers experience this exact problem. It's not weakness. It's your brain running on an old program designed for survival in competitive environments that now just keeps the anxiety loop spinning 24/7. Have you ever caught yourself doing the same thing? Finishing a killer presentation and immediately thinking, yeah, but they were just being polite. Or closing a big deal and wondering if the client will eventually see right through you. That's the loop talking. The good news is awareness is the first circuit breaker. We can break that circuit. When you name it, there's that vicious anxiety loop again. You create a tiny bit of distance. And that distance is where we start using your analytical mind as a recovery tool instead of the tormentor. Now let's move into our first major strategy. Something completely fresh that plays right to your high achiever strengths. I call it the attribution rebalancing protocol. Ooh, that sounds pretty technical, doesn't it? This is not about forcing positive thoughts. It's about running a logical audit on how you assign credit and blame, then gently shifting the balance with cold, hard data. Cold, hard facts. What's the evidence? High achievers tend to attribute successes to external luck. The team carried me. Timing was just perfect. It was luck. And failures to internal flaws. I'm just not smart enough. And the attribution rebalancing protocol flips that script using the same analytical brain you use for quarterly reports or patient charts. Here's exactly how you do it. Next time that never good enough feeling shows up, pause and grab your phone or a notepad. Ask yourself these 4 precise questions and write down the answers like you're preparing a case brief or a client or clinician report. What specific actions did I take that directly contributed to this outcome? List them factually. No minimizing. Don't do it. Don't downplay it. List them. What external factors played a role and what percentage of the result do they realistically account for? If a colleague with my exact experience and track record achieved this, what would I say about their competence? Based on the data, what's the most balanced conclusion here? Dr. Rachel, remember her? Used this after a big treatment protocol win. She listed every evidence-based decision that she made, even late-night literature review, every family consultation that she handled with compassion. When she assigned realistic percentages, she realized external factors accounted for maybe 20% at best. The rest her clinical expertise. Reading it back in black and white, she actually laughed and said, "My brain was treating my medical degree and 15 years of experience like a participation ribbon." That single exercise interrupted her anxiety loop in under 10 minutes. Profound. You can do the same. Try it this week on one recent win, big or small. You'll be amazed at how quickly the cognitive distortion starts to lose its grip when you treat it like data instead of truth. That's huge. That's a big aha moment here. When you treat it like data instead of truth, it's when you turn what you believe is data into your truth. That's a false narrative. That false narrative becomes a belief, and that belief can influence how you feel about yourself. I'm a failure. People are going to find me out. I'm going to get fired. And that's what happens. So treat it as data instead of truth. And speaking of data, if these strategies are clicking for you, I'd love it if you take 30 seconds right now to leave a quick review at www.mentalhealthtodayShow.com/rate-the-show. It helps other busy professionals like you find practical tools like this and keeps the show growing. It really helps. All right, let's build on that momentum with our second key strategy, the third-person narrative rewrite. This one is pure gold for overthinkers because it leverages your natural ability to analyze situations objectively. Except now you apply that objectivity to yourself. Wouldn't that be nice for a change? Instead of being trapped inside the "I'm a fraud" story, you step outside it and rewrite the narrative as if you were advising a respected colleague. Here's how it works step by step. When imposter feelings hit, open a note on your device and write the entire situation in third person. Start with, "My colleague," your name. "My colleague just accomplished X," whatever that is. Here are the facts of what happened. Then you list out the objective evidence. Next, address the distortions directly. The voice saying you're not good enough is a common cognitive distortion called discounting the positive. Based on the track record, here's what I would tell this high-achieving professional. End with one actionable next step you would recommend to them. That's all you got to do. Look at the data, but don't misinterpret it as truth. Write it down. Write it down in third person. I had another client, let's call him Marcus. He was a corporate attorney who was just won a high-stakes litigation case that saved his clients millions. He was beating himself up with, "They'll realize I got lucky with the judge's ruling." Using that third-person narrative rewrite, he wrote it out like a legal memo. And that's what I recommend. Whatever profession that you are in, write these out as if they are common to you. Could be a physician, could be a lawyer, could be a therapist. Write it out. Write it down, just like you would any other report. When he read the final paragraph back to himself, Marcus's preparation research and courtroom presence were decisive factors. He actually said it out loud. "Wait, that's me. That's actually me. I did that." The emotional charge dropped instantly because he was no longer the defendant in his own mental courtroom. He was the objective counsel. This technique works so well because it uses the exact same detached analytical lens you already apply to client files, project plans, and research papers. Again, whatever profession you're in, you're already using that analytical side of your brain. Use it for this. Don't rely so heavily on your emotional brain. Yes, your feelings are valid, but when you rely solely on your emotional brain, you're going to feel like an imposter. And that overthinking And that anxiety loop is going to continue, but you got to do something about it. You're not fighting the feeling, you're outsmarting it with the mental mechanics you're already wired for. Try this once in the next few days. You might be surprised at how quickly it turns mental barriers into mental clarity. Let's keep rolling into our third key segment, turning the analytical wiring into proactive burnout prevention system. Don't you love my long, drawn-out titles for these things? Proactive burnout prevention system. Wow, that sounds pretty technical. High achievers don't burn out because they work hard. They burn out because they treat their own mental, emotional energy like an unlimited resource instead of the finite strategic asset that it actually is. Did you get that? Burnout's not because you're working hard, you're a hard worker. But when you treat your own mental and emotional energy with an unlimited resource, you will burn out because your brain, my friends, and my brain and our bodies are not infinite. We need rest. We need to know when to take a break. So we're going to borrow a tool from the business world you already know. The energy allocation model. Think of your mental energy as a quarterly budget. You have a limited amount each week. Imposter syndrome and perfectionistic loops drain it faster than anything else because they keep you in constant overanalysis mode. The energy allocation model helps you forecast, track, and protect that budget before burnout sneaks up. Here's the simple 4-step process you can set up in 15 minutes. List your top 5 energy drains and energy gains for a typical week. Be brutally specific here. Don't be vague. Don't just say work stress. Assign realistic cost percentages to each drain. For example, rumination after a meeting might cost 20% of your daily mental budget. Set one non-negotiable energy deposit activity each day that directly counters an imposter trigger. For Marcus, it was a 10-minute walk where he verbally listed 3 pieces of evidence from his day that proved his competence. Review and adjust every Sunday night, just like you would a project budget. Quick, factual, no self-judgment. Stick with the data. Don't trust the emotions. Dr. Rachel put this into practice and discovered that her post-rounds never good enough rumination was eating 40% of her evening energy. 40%. That means her family, that means her own personal time suffered, even when she wasn't working. Do you think she was on her way to burnout? Yeah, she was. She replaced it with a quick energy allocation check-in and a 5-minute voice memo celebrating one clinical win. Within a month, her burnout symptoms eased, her sleep improved, and bonus, she showed up more present for her own family because she wasn't carrying the anxiety loop home. She wasn't taking it to bed either. This isn't about doing less. It's about protecting your most valuable resource so you can keep achieving at the level you love, without paying for it with your wellness. It's about mental wellness, but being smart about it and treating the data more than you pay attention to the emotions around the imposter syndrome. Your analytical mind already runs complex models at work. Now it's about running one just for you. We've got one final key segment to wrap up here, and it's the one that ties everything together. Building long-term resilience by turning your high achievement wiring into a self-reinforcing wellness loop instead of an anxiety loop. We do this with what I call the Mastery Micro Tracking System. Another great term. The Mastery Micro Tracking System. This is different from anything you've probably tried because it's built like a performance dashboard. but for internal competence rather than external metrics. Every evening, for just 3 minutes, you log 3 tiny mastery moments from the day. Not huge wins, but micro ones. I called a cognitive distortion mid-meeting and rebalanced it on the spot. That's a micro win. I asked a clarifying question instead of pretending I knew everything. Then you rate your confidence level in that skill on a 1 to 10 scale and note one piece of evidence that supports the rating. Over time, you literally watch your competence graph trend upward with hard data. There it is again, data. Are you getting the picture? Trust your data. Trust the evidence. The beauty here is your brain, which loves patterns and evidence, starts to trust the upward trend instead of defaulting to never good enough. Marcus's graph after 6 weeks showed his average confidence in his legal judgment rising from a 4 to an astonishing 8. He told me it's like my brain finally has receipts instead of rumors. Dr. Rachel used it to track her patient-family interactions and realized she was far more competent than her imposter voice ever admitted. This system reframes the entire game. Imposter syndrome stops being a life sentence and becomes a solvable mechanics problem for once. You're not fighting your wiring, you're upgrading it. Wow, that's a big one. You're not fighting your wiring, you're upgrading it. You're redirecting it, and you're trusting the data. Wow, we covered some serious ground today, my friends. Let's quickly recap the key takeaway before you head back into your busy world. You may want to re-listen to this as well. Take some notes. First, imposter syndrome is a cognitive distortion trap fueled by perfectionistic feedback loops that high achievers maintain without realizing it. It's not a character flaw. Second, the attribution rebalancing protocol lets you use your analytical superpowers to assign credit accurately and break the never good enough cycle with data. Third is the third-person narrative rewrite. It gives you the instant objectivity so you can advise yourself the same way you would advise a respected colleague. Fourth, the energy allocation model and mastery micro-tracking system. Turn your mental energy and competence into trackable assets, preventing burnout and building a self-reinforcing wellness loop instead. Yes. The most powerful shift here is realizing your analytical mind isn't the enemy. It's the exact tool you've been waiting for to turn mental barriers into genuine mental wellness. If you're listening while commuting, grabbing lunch, or sneaking in a workout, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You are not behind. You are not a fraud. You are a high achiever who has now fresh mechanics to rewrite the old story. Yes. I hope that gives you some encouragement. Before I sign off here, I've got to ask again because it really helps the show grow. Please take 30 seconds out of your day and go to www.mentalhealthtodayShow.com/rate the show. That link will take you exactly to whatever podcast you use. And it makes it so simple. Just follow the show and leave your review. That's all it takes. It truly, truly helps me know that this is helpful for you. That's all, my friends. Thank you for listening to the Mental Health Today Show. Until next time, good day and good night.